Yeah?
Yes, start.
Okay, great. A very warm welcome, dear students, dear guests, once again to the Sessions of Territory, a series of public debates this spring on the political economy of architecture and territory. The focus this year will be on the agency of architecture in the civil service. This is the kind of architecture that is working within or alongside public institutions or striving to create conditions for working in the public. This program is produced this year by the Future Cities Lab and the Architecture of Territory team at ETH Zurich Department of Architecture. And we are delighted to have with us in the first session opening this series Čukić from the Ministry of Space in Belgrade and Ella Esslinger from ZAS, Zuricher Arbeitsgruppe für Städtebau. And this will be a very, very fitting opening of the conversation about engaged architectural practice, and of course across European borders. This is really special, and I thank you both for being with us. You will be introduced in a moment. And now also a special thank you for great collaboration to my co-curators and co-organizers on both sides, Dr. Julio Paulos and Jakob, I'm sure a future doctor, whom I will also introduce in a moment, and a very warm gratitude to Amélie Lambert behind the camera tonight, and also for working with us and being our right and left hand in terms of organization. And thank you also to Evelyn Gordon for travel arrangements, and to the Chair of Architecture and Urban Transformation for hosting this program in this coziest setting of the department of the Design in Dialogue Lab. So before turning our attention to the agency of architecture in the civil service, just a few words about this program. The Sessions on Territory. I am proud to say that we started this program already 9 years ago with the focus on the shifting role of design at scales, let's say, beyond the building. So, design in relation to urban space and territory. And over the years, we discussed the urban and the spatial transformation in the extended sense. So urban beyond the city was very important, trying to capture the dynamic of contemporary territories and the processes that I could say from my perspective, or the perspective of the research that we're doing, the processes of planetary and extended urbanization. We also had an important concerns in kind of projecting the urban beyond the human, and discussing human entanglements in the web of life, and then also debating and exploring design of the urban beyond the object, beyond the architectural object, and therefore outlining the kind of important and desired shift in the design education and practice. And as you can see on these various posters going back almost 10 years, we tackled through the sessions topics of neoliberal power in our societies, of Anthropocene, and of various ecologies under Anthropocene. We debated technology beyond techno-fixing, then politics of material flows and accumulations, agrarian questions, and in the past 2 years, the emerging ethos and practices of repair, and finally mobilizing in the times of climate crisis. And it was, I think, in fact, it's a fantastic program. It's documented on the web, and I think these sessions and these talks are still very much alive and shared, and some of them have received hundreds and if not thousands of views. So I highly recommend it. So in this spring we have dedicated the sessions to the Agency of Architecture in the civil service. Maybe you want to change the slide. And the idea is to examine architecture's role in the public sector, featuring practitioners that are engaged with or working within state institutions. And with them together, and with the students and the audience, we will debate how architecture can help advance public interest in the broadest sense, in encompassing the public good, public ownership, public space, and the public sphere, and all of that amid the growing challenges from the state, market, technology, and sadly, erosion of trust in social institutions. So, to tell you a little bit more about the concept, I will hand over in a moment to my co-curators. First, to tell you a little bit about them. So, Dr. Julio Paulos is an interdisciplinary urban scholar whose engagements relate to such urban challenges. He currently coordinates the research program, one of the largest at our department, at Future Cities Laboratory Global, whose aim is to produce research that is coherent and that is able to address how we can live better on our rapidly urbanizing planet in the face of these multiple challenges. Julio was a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Lausanne for 3 years before moving here in 2023. He was also previously a research assistant at ETH Zurich. He was MCTS visiting fellow at TU Munich and also a researcher at the Center of Sociology of Innovation in Paris. And Jakob Walter is an architect and now also research and teaching collaborator in teaching undergraduate design studios. He studied architecture in Leipzig, Weimar, and here at ETH. For his thesis project, Cohabitation Podcast in 2020 with Station Plus, he referred to wildlife protection laws to protect residential buildings from demolition. This was a very brilliant thesis. He did so by making brown long-eared bats settle in buildings. So he's a man of ideas. That was really great. And he has been editor at ArcPlus for 2 years. And in early 23, he joined our team in teaching. And also he's part of the very brilliant ZAS, Zürcher Arbeitsgruppe für Städtebau, that we will hear about tonight. And he was also teaching their experimental studio. So I would like to give a word to both of them. I think Julio will tell you a little bit more about the concept, and then Jakob also about the program, and we will introduce the guests.
Thank you, Milica. Yes, I will try to not speak too long. I just say this because I usually speak long, so it's a reminder to myself. But yes, so when we started thinking together, we came up with this kind of, I think, simple but yet urgent question of how does architecture engage with the state? And not just as some backdrop for policy or a service, a technical service to be produced, but as architecture as a critical actor in shaping civil society, public good, public space, or public ownership. So in this series, we actually really wanted to delve into this. So, and then we also realized that basically this discussion, it cannot be isolated from the larger forces that shape society. So we see, as Milica explained, an increasing pressure on public institutions, the eroding trust in governments, then market-driven urbanism, new technologies and technological infrastructure, and all this reorganizes somehow how space is planned, owned, or used. This means that architecture's role in public life, it's not just no longer just about designing space, but it's also about navigating those interspaces of power, responsibility, and even futures that are contested, be it through climate pressures or other uncertainties. Jakob, can you? And I guess a powerful example of this tension I like to use, it's not that I did research on it, but it's this Campo de la Cebada in Madrid. And it's an historical example. It was in 2009. And this used to be a public sports complex where you see all these temporary let's say, objects. It used to be a public sports complex, and it was demolished, and it left behind an empty lot. And it was kind of a space of uncertainty, because at the moment, during the severe economic crisis, the state lacked funds to rebuild it. And although developers saw an opportunity, they could not obviously invest at that time. So in 2011, at the height of Spain's economic crisis, and there was this Occupy movement that started, the 50M. And it's very interesting how local residents and activists and unemployed architects kind of occupied this site. So they didn't wait for institutional solutions, they transformed it into a self-managed public space. Yes, was good timing. So a laboratory for collective urbanism, they called it. They had assemblies, grassroots engagement, and for several years this Campo de la Cebada functioned as an urban commons, and it basically also blurred the lines between what is sanctioned or public space and collective space, and also between architecture as a profession and architecture as a collective political act. And next picture. And so they, the architects or those assemblies, they made like prototypes that they put as open source. And if you show also the next picture, you could see how people started using the place. So this case raises a crucial question. So where does architecture stand in moments of institutional rupture? Does it align with the state? Does it intervene in its absence? Or does it forge an entirely new structure of possibility? And this brings us to a broader framework of the seminar series. Architecture's relationship with the state is not fixed. It shifts with economic systems, with social movements, basically with society at large. So architects may work within institutions, design public infrastructure, and or also design regulatory frameworks. They may work against institutions, challenging practices like or resisting privatization, or they may work beyond them. So engage with informal networks, activist coalitions, transnational forces, that shape urban life in ways that governments cannot or will not acknowledge. So also these positions are not static, and basically that's the core of our thinking when we were putting it together, is that some of the most interesting architectural practices today navigate multiple roles. They advise municipalities or also collaborate with grassroots actors. They critique dominant planning paradigms while working also on pragmatic solutions. And with that, I hand over to Jakob, who introduces the rest of the series.
Yes, I will introduce the rest. I think most of you already gave a bit of an overview, but I tried to make it differently this time. So I took the cross again as the cross that everybody loves, and to kind of position our 6 contributions in it. I decided to go into state and private and top down and bottom up, and hope to kind of organize kind of our the six projects or the 6 events we have into these categories. I think today I see us fixing up the bottom right corner, like with the Ministry of Space being very much bottom up, being not part of any like organization, any authority, but being like as they're organizing in participation and not in state. Ämtli, I feel like is I don't know. We can discuss this, but I feel like it's a bit above, no? I don't know. This is a thesis, so we'll see in the end of the night if it's become true. Then in 2 weeks we will have Amélie give from the AA and London University. She will give a bit the history of the transition from the British welfare state architecture to the British neoliberal technocracy architecture. So a bit of a historic background. And then 2 weeks after that, we have Gruppe für Expressprojekte, a personal favorite. It's kind of a state-run architecture office in Zurich that does little repairs, like 10 architects that do little repairs. And I feel like they are like obviously pretty much state, and I don't know, maybe not as top-down as British welfare state, but in the end it's just planners, no? Then a week after, we have public-civic partnerships from Rebecca Wahl and Felix Marlow. They did a recent study in Berlin on big like participation projects on like the Haus der Statistik, and they're kind of analyzed over I think 2 or 3 years those giant participation projects and trying to understand how they work for both sides, and we hope that we are looking forward to these results, let's say. And of course, this will be very state-run and very bottom-up, because that's the concept, no? Then participation and innovation is what I call is the title of the lecture Markus Miesen and Julio do together on how participation and innovation can work together. I feel like innovation is a more private topic, participation is a more bottom-up topic. I don't know, maybe it should be more also here, we'll see. And then lastly, we have Finn Williams, city architect in Malmö, who is more a managerial architect overseeing like the architectural programs in Malmö, and not so much actually a planner, I feel. So this is... Obviously, I have no idea if this is true yet, but we'll see. Okay, so today, Milica already said what we're doing today. We have the Ministry of Space meeting, the Ämtli, in its home city, and of course, like both are not actually. When I showed this to a friend yesterday, he was confused if the ministry is actually an authority or not. I think this is a lot of the topic tonight. No, is figuring out how this mimicry and copying, how it plays in favor or how it works. So I will introduce quickly Ella. Ella is part, obviously, of ZAS and co-led also last year's experimental studio, where the Ämtli Für Städtebau was founded as kind of almost as a framework for the studio. So we became this mimicry organization and trying to communicate between the administration and the public, kind of be the missing link. Ella also studied here, did her diploma on the Kunsthaus Zurich, and I don't know, is moving on to LA, and I don't know, other stories. But No. ZAS, you will also introduce, so I don't need to do this. And you will do Eva now.
Yeah. So yes, of course. Eva and I come from the same city, so it's really a pleasure to have you with us. Eva Čukić. In 2010, she co-founded, and today she leads this extraordinary collective, Ministry of Space, or Ministarstvo prostora, which contributes to the democratic and just development of cities. So this is a genuine private institution that is also born, I think, from experience of student activism or student political engagement. Eva graduated from the Faculty of Architecture in Belgrade. She earned a PhD in urban planning. Her research areas include urban commons and urban transformation, and she pursues these by intersecting academic and perspective with the work in practice. The ministry engages with communities, as you can see, and as we will hear, supporting various local initiatives in their efforts to address spatial issues of urban transformation, contributing to social and political change based on the principle of social justice and certainly environmental justice. In her academic career, Eva lectured throughout Europe at TU Berlin, Oxford Architectural Association, and other places. She was very rightfully named by the Royal Institute of British Architects, one of the 100 women architects in practice. Today, released last year, and this selection represented the selection of female architects around the world, distinguished through their professional contribution to society and environment. She is also a member of the advisory board of the Faculty of Applied Arts in Vienna, the board of the Guerrilla Foundation in Germany, Trag Foundation, and chair of the board of Jelena Šantić Foundation, very, very important non-governmental organizations, both in Serbia. And I would like to say that knowing a little bit of Eva's background, and also I am let's say an older generation of architects who have had a kind of a more let's say certain energy to address social political questions in our societies, and the role of architecture in leading to the conditions of social change. I would like to share that in the last almost 4 months, there is a huge social movement that is student-led in Serbia and in Belgrade that has been perhaps unjustly let's say omitted from the news. I think in most of Europe, and certainly also Switzerland, and it's important to acknowledge this energy, and to I feel that I would like to express support and solidarity, and that we can use this event to send our good wishes to fellow students in universities in Serbia and Belgrade. So Eva, it's a pleasure to have you, and looking very much forward to hear from Ella, and then to have a debate. It's wonderful to have you both for this opening session. Would you like to come over? We will now make the table, make the stage free for you.
Dobro. It works. Super. Everything works now. Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. Milica, thank you for a fantastic introduction and also for the support for the students in Serbia and their struggle for a just society and more solidarity in general, not only in our country. I will introduce the work of Ministry of Space and try to kind of give an overview of what we were doing in the last 15 years. Can I use the regular mic because this is kind of annoying a bit? I don't know how to, and my hair also doesn't work with this, it doesn't go along. Yes. Palimo, odlično. Sad je sve kako treba. Okay, so we founded this organization in 2010-11 with the idea actually to address the fact that the public property has been misused, and there was no data about who owns what and where you can find this information and how it's been used and so on. We still don't have the data. So 15 years ago, this register of public property is still not updated and regulated. So our idea was, okay, let's try to tackle this issue, and everything we do in using different methodologies. So we do a lot of research and advocacy and analyzing the laws and drafting the policies and so on. But in the systems of autocratic government, it doesn't work very well. So there is no one on the other side to talk with. So the decision makers are completely unavailable, and the level of mistrust is huge. But also policy makers are kind of captured, and the institutions are captured by the government. So it's kind of, you have to find the ways to deal with the situation and empower people to fight for their right to the city. So we started by occupying spaces, empty spaces in Belgrade. One of the first initiatives was a street gallery, Ulična galerija. So it was abandoned street, if that's possible, in the city center. So this is the picture from 2007, let's say. It's 100 meters from the National Assembly, and the wall belonged to the old cinema, which was privatized in some kind of criminal privatization process, and everything was neglected for many years. But also some local bully came one day and he started charging the parking here. So for the residents over there in the building, like residents were paying him 100 euros per month without asking like why. So one day we came there with the idea to turn that space into a gallery, but not because we wanted to now do like some kind of curating art, whatever. We are not into that, but like to create a space for dialogue and also to show how public space can be used differently. So what can be other option for public space? And it took us 2 years of negotiating with the local municipality. Back then the municipality was basically managing the property. But as I mentioned, the level of mistrust was really huge. And the guy was kind of thinking, are we some kind of new political party that finds a new way of promoting their politics? Or we just want to open a bar and that's the way how we just like presenting it and so on. And at the end, my friend, I was already withdrawing for these negotiations, and my friend said, okay, let's go there and lie. And those for you who understand how Balkan functions, we exist thanks to each other, you know, so Serbs thanks to Croats, Croats thanks to us, and so on. So we came there, and he lied that there is one space like this in Zagreb. And the guy said, what? If there is one in Zagreb, we will have 50. And he signed this paper, and that's how we got it for a temporary use for 3 years with the opportunity to prolong the contract. And this is the picture from October last year. So this is one of the most vivid spaces in cities. Ministry of Space, we were managing the space until December 2020, and now it's managed by the Matriarchy. It's a feminist collective from Belgrade. And the idea behind it is basically to use this opportunity of being in the public space and to address social and political important topics to be discussed. So all the openings are on Fridays, every second or third Friday at 8, no matter what kind of weather conditions are there. And that's also something that you have to deal with and nurture the audience, because first people are calling you, oh, it's raining, should we come? And then you're, yes, I mean, you will not melt. So we find the ways of operate in these non-conditions for some people. And up until now, I think it had like a few hundreds exhibitions and side programs. It was also shortlisted for the European Prize for Public Space. That is the award that is given by the Contemporary Cultural Center of Barcelona. And it kind of became an example for similar spaces in Serbia. Now we have 7 street galleries, and there is one in London. Actually, one woman who saw it, she was inspired and she started negotiating there. I don't know how it goes, but yeah. Second thing was Inex Film. It was an abandoned building very close to the city center. It belonged to the former Yugoslav movie production, and then it also got privatized, and it's around 1,500 square meters. It took us, unlike with the street gallery, 2 years to negotiate. Here we just entered and started with like different activities, and it took us 6 months to kind of refurbish the building. So we started by organizing these kind of cleaning actions. At the beginning, it was just, so the first meeting was on March, Sunday morning. We invited around 50 people, mostly architects, I have to say. And what annoyed me a lot was like the level of, like the lack of imagination of my colleagues, because they immediately came with like, oh no, we need 1 million euros to reconstruct this, because there was no window, no electricity, nothing, no water. So we were like, okay, we don't have that money. We have like pocket money from our parents. So let's meet next week and see what we can do with our hands. And only 5 of us came. So we started every 2 weeks this cleaning session, and in between some kind of party things, exhibitions, cooking together and so on. And people got lost when it's cleaning and when it's partying. So we gained a critical mass. And after 6 months, it actually became some kind of social and cultural center, which had different studios and also galleries, places to sleep over, the kindergarten for Roma community, for kids from Roma community in the neighborhood. And it lasted, let's say, 5 years. Until, I mean, we try to, and I will explain that later in different examples, we try to kind of basically introduce this horizontality in decision making, and that's very difficult. I mean, you have to put a lot of effort. I believe in collective processes, and I always practice them, but you have to be aware of like how energy consuming that is. And here that was the case. On the first floor we had anarcho-punkers, and on the second we had artists, and they just couldn't find a way to communicate among themselves. So it actually fell apart because it was very difficult to find like a common language. But that was also the first building that I occupied, so I got some lessons from there, and then I just like improved all that in other situations. This is Cinema Zvezda. This is actually a very European known example of occupation. We did it in October 2014 in the city center, one of the cinemas that got privatized out of 14, which got privatized in one day and closed. So Belgrade stayed without cinemas until these shopping malls came into the picture. So this one also remained as a guarantee to the former workers that they will get their shares back after the privatization. And this occupation actually was supported massively within the country and outside. For example, this is the animated movie made by Michel Gondry, the French director, for our crowdfunding campaign. And also Alain Badiou came there, Tsipras before he became a president, and other people just like to support the action. And this initiative was actually filmed from the very beginning documentary movie which is called New Cinema Zvezda, and you should definitely look it because it really pictures well how these collective processes can be traumatizing for those who are involved, but because we are entering all the discussions with pre-assumption that we share the same values and we understand each other. And that was the main learning from Inex film and Zvezda, because we don't, even if we do, like we occupy together and so on, it doesn't mean that we understand altogether what we are doing there. So things need to be discussed and trust need to be developed in order to kind of have some progress and to establish some new kind of institution. So watch that movie, learn from it, and then start your own initiative. And then finally, all these learnings came into a new activity called KC Magazine, Cultural Center Magazine. Magazine means warehouse. And this number 4 is actually a big warehouse that belonged to the former Yugoslav publishing company. And during the democratic period of Serbia, the former mayor actually wanted to create an independent cultural center in Belgrade. And then he gave that building to the 6 organizations from the independent cultural scene. But the contract was never signed. Later, that mayor died. The government changed, like the government that we have now, and everything fell apart. So there were several attempts of eviction of this space. And the guys who were using the space invited us to find a way how we can protect it. And our idea was to open it in order to protect it. So to invite as much people as we can and to open the space for all those who are interested to use it. So what we created was the open calendar model. And we distributed around 300 keys around the city. So basically, you have a team-up platform, everyone has a link, you enter the platform. Here on the left, you have the names of the rooms, different rooms in those buildings. This was created in 2014. Number 6 across the yard was occupied in 2015, that's a makerspace. Number 8 we occupied in 2016. And I mean, these two, 4 and 6, were easy to occupy because they are somehow hidden from the street. They are in the courtyard. But number 6 was difficult because it's on the street. It's very visible. So what we did, for example, this is just an anecdote. We bought a fake Mona Lisa on a flea market and announced that Mona Lisa is coming to Belgrade and will be exhibited there. And like create posters, postcards everywhere, distributed it around the entire city. And there were like hundreds of people coming there to see Mona Lisa. No one questioned why they're not in the Museum of National Art, for example. And we bought the red carpet, like robes, everything. It was like really gala. And then it was a grand opening. And with this model, which included already hundreds of people involved, it created a critical mass that was very difficult to evict. So the calendar is used basically by all the members of the assembly, back then by everyone who had the access. And you can use different rooms in different time slots. You put the main description of what you're doing there, your contact, and that's basically it. Since this the interest for this space grew, and it's around 2,000 square meters. But it also proved that you don't need space 24/7, that things can be shared. We had to create kind of a clear model of how the governance of magazine works. So we created this. So the magazine is managed by the assembly of its users. We meet once a month. And then the type of users are regular. Those are the members of the assembly, so we are involved in decision making. And occasional users. Those are the people who are using the space, but they don't want to decide on anything. And that's totally fine. You don't need to force people to be involved if they don't want to be. And then we have operating bodies, which are all rotating functions that are coming from the assembly. So we have a monthly coordinator that comes from the assembly, and that person takes care about the everyday things, which are not much complex, like about toilet paper and just like few emails that are coming. And then technical maintaining team, PR, photo team, and so on, and working groups according to the needs that we are facing. So I am the member of the working group for creating this model of governance, and then we meet every now and then to adopt the model because now we have like hundreds of people in the in the assembly, and how we make decisions. So it's important. We don't have any kind of curatorial practice. We don't go and discuss if we like or not the exhibitions or the programs that are proposed, but we created a very clear set of values, unacceptable behaviors and programs, and priorities how to use the calendar. So all of these things are actually explained in few paragraphs. And then this document of few hundred pages was discussed for 3 months within the assembly until everyone understood every single word from the document, and then it was adopted by the assembly. And that created the sense of ownership. So it didn't came top down, it was created by all of us, and we all agree on that. And people are taking care about magazine. We don't need cameras, we don't need to lock things, we don't need a police or whatever, because we are all taking care about every single square meter of the space. And then, for example, this is important about the calendar. If, for example, we want to use the same room at the same time, me as a member of the assembly and as a dinosaurs of the space, and you coming from Zurich now and want to have your event there, if you have public program which will bring more people than my meeting for a smaller group, you will have priority. Because we said at the beginning, we are opening space in order to protect it. So we want to have people there who feel the space as it belongs to them. Now I explained like super complex model, super simple, but I also have all of these documents in English if you're interested in learning more about these operational things. What was actually some kind of milestone in our organization was the movement on the Belgrade Drown, which we created in 2014 to oppose the massive development and massive controversial development project, Belgrade Waterfront, which is now built. That's basically United Arab Emirates investment and privatization of 100 acres of the city center of Belgrade on Sava River. And it was introduced in the very, very bad way, and in terms that actually it deregulated all our regulation and institutions at the same time, putting it on the fast lane to be developed as fast as possible. So we did created a big protest against it that took time from 2014 to 2018. Every few weeks we were like gathering between 20 to 30,000 people on the streets of Belgrade to protest against it. The main symbol was a duck. The duck, there are several reasons why the duck was the symbol of resistance. First, everyone has it in their houses, like you have it in your bathroom. And it's also cute to have it like a small duck in your, on your table as a resistant symbol. It means that when everything goes under the water, it will remain floating, but it also means fraud in our slang, and it also means, in our slang, a male reproductive organ. So you can actually play with different meanings. What grew out of there? So we split as a Ministry of Space into two entities. One became a political party. Few of the guys who were the co-founders of the Ministry of Space, now they are a member of political party and the founders of that party, Green Left Front, which is the only one on that spectrum in Serbia. And we, a few of us, stayed in Ministry of Space, and we also got new people on board. What actually this situation brought us is that we managed to politicize the question of urban planning. So it became very important, and people became very aware of the fact that they need to be engaged in the planning process in order to protect their neighborhoods. So what we do, we then created something that we called crisis headquarters, krizni štab. So we do mobilization. We go in different neighborhoods and talk with people what will happen in their neighborhoods. Up until now, we worked with more than 100 neighborhood groups, like informal groups. So we use a lot of social media to announce which plans are on public insights and how you can participate. Then we created the GIS map where we upload all the maps on the territory and urban projects on the territory of Belgrade with all the data that you need to know when you can participate, how you can get engaged, what are the important things that you need to know. Then we go to the neighborhoods and we explained again everything to the people. Because of, as I mentioned, because of the massive work and the massive also interest in of citizens to be engaged, we created several tools to make our life easier. So one is the guide to defend the space. This is this red book, sorry. So it basically it maps all the steps that you need from creating a Viber group with your neighbors up until going to the Constitutional Court, like every single step between. So all of our 10 years experience with it, everything is there. And you also have the examples of how to communicate with the judges, how to communicate with the Planning Commission, everything is there, all the examples. Then we have this small guide through planning the cities, where basically the planning system is explained so it can be understood by the citizens, but it's not banalized. And then we have online platform, how to read the plans, where to find the plan, how to make your objection, and then we prepare you for a public session with the Planning Commission. So all of the steps there. And basically this vocabulary of urban planning looks like this, and then you find small drawings and you understand what you're looking there, because it's very difficult when you go and just to understand, if you want to get to know more about the plan, you go to the basement of the city administration. So for those who read the Hitchhiker's Guide Through Galaxy, you know that book? So the first story, the beginning where they have wild animals in the basement and the guy is trying to find that his house will be demolished. That's how the planning system and the procedure actually works in Belgrade. So we had to kind of translate what people are seeing on this paper so they can understand it, and then we also again go to the neighborhood and explain the entire drawing again. What it contributes to, the increased understanding of participation. So now we have all these kind of informal groups on the territory of Belgrade. It also contributed to rejections of plans and the projects which were not in the public interest, in the common interest of the community. And then completely independent and proactive groups of citizens that are influential on the local level. And that was the step that I actually like the most. When people feel this collective energy and then they become proactive. So they defended the space, but now they have ideas what to do next. And that's the reason why we actually created citizens' assemblies. So this is a very complex format of deliberation and bringing people, like randomly selected people, to discuss what they would like to have in their neighborhood. And they have to come with a consensus. And the entire process, so this is not a panel discussion, this lasts between 8 and 16 hours. And there are people from the neighborhood, including experts on the specific topics. In the ideal case, we would have the decision makers as well, but in Serbia it doesn't work like that. And we, up until now, we had 5 of these assemblies, so 4 on concrete territories and 1 on the level of Belgrade with the representative sample of Belgrade citizens, and it really worked very well. And we now got invited to Zagreb next month to actually organize an assembly there, because there is actually an interest of the local government to be involved in this. And that's all by me now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Eva, so much for sharing your work of the past 15 years at the Ministry of Space. I think in comparison, our Ämtli Für Städtebau is very young, because we only started to work on it last September. So, yeah. As a representative of ZAS, the Zurich Working Group for Urbanism, I will just briefly talk about how we formed and what kind of projects gave us the opportunity to interact with the city's administration, but also mainly focus on the Ämtli Für Städtebau, a structure that we inaugurated last September. And yeah, by presenting this infrastructure, I hope that this can serve as a good basis for discussion on the relationship to administration, but also on processes of imitation and reenactment, or making a clear opposition that makes for an institutional or infrastructural critique. ZAS is the people you see here in this image, plus others. Some are here in the room and some are elsewhere in the world. And altogether we are now around 40 people. And it's a fluctuating number because during our visiting lectureship at ETH we doubled in size from around 20. And I hope that some of them will still be working with us together. Initially, we got together because of our shared interests and causes in practice, in research, and in our lived reality. In the last years, most of us were living in interim uses, moving around Zurich a lot of times, and seeing one flat after the other shortly before they disappear. And these experiences were reflected in our work, and we were trying to find alternatives for this wasteful attitude towards buildings. And in 2021, we started to meet regularly to combine forces and to share knowledge. And our goal was to address these issues not individually, but to generate more visibility as a group in an association that exists outside of an office structure, a lobby of building culture, so to say. Today on our website you can find the following statement, and I will just read a part of it. The discussions focus on current issues in Zurich's urban planning, such as the confrontation with the existing. The principle of ZAS is not only expressing opposition to the official proposals, but always justifying this opposition with transformative counter-proposals. So our common idea was to increase the joy of working with the existing context and also to spark this joy to others. During some research and our studies, we came across a group of architects that started to organize and meet in an association from end of the 50s onwards under the name of ZAS, Züricher Arbeitsgruppe für Städtebau, and the group consisted of many people, and some of you might have heard of, like Fritz Schwarz, Beata Schnitter, Manuel Pauli, Eduard Neuenschwander. And back then they were all very young and had just completed their first build projects. In 1960, one of their first activities was a campaign to protect the Fleischhalle Zurich from demolition, and they transformed the building, one of the last Zurich's typical river buildings, into a so-called Limmatgalerie with a restaurant, cafe and shops. During the voting campaign, they installed this temporary cafe to raise awareness for a cause, and the referendum was unfortunately lost, but the group received a lot of public attention. And in the following years, many projects of the group followed, and as mentioned in the statement, ZAS was always acting with a clear political attitude, not by opposing, but by coming up with counter-proposals. So sometimes we try to draw back these strategies to learn how such a line works. The greatest success of the old ZAS was probably the prevention of the infamous Y project, the connection of two pieces of the Autobahn by an elevated road over the Siel and the Limmat. Today, some of the buildings of the original ZAS members are already destroyed or will be destroyed soon. This is, for instance, the Salzweg, a project by Manuel and Eva Pauli just after completion. And I think studying this building gives an idea that they wanted their buildings to be resilient, and this made us think on how we can continue building with their legacy and respecting their values and rights. And therefore we decided to adopt the name of the old ZAS and refound the association that dissolved in 1989. And for this we also wrote to some of the original ZAS members, and some members of the group contacted Beata Schnitter and Fritz Schwarz, and they were really delighted that someone finally was contacting them and also shedding light on the group. And this is a picture where some members talked with Fritz Schwarz on the terrace about his thoughts and experiences of the generation, so that we could learn from the organization of the old ZAS that managed to be active for 30 years. Yeah, it's very interesting how this period of time, or exactly the buildings from that time, are under a debate of being torn down, and we can in a way pick up this in the involvement and the dealing with these buildings. So building up on what is already there for us was also logical, or there was also the logical step to use an association and to repurpose their names and interests for something that we are interested in. ZAS is not really our money-making profession. We all earn money somewhere else, and I think it's also not the idea to become a sort of office structure. And Fritz Schwarz, one of the founders, told ZAS that they believed in the importance to be aware of our other role as architects, our role as citizens, and they proposed that all experts and architects as such should be spending 5% of their time volunteering for society. And we really like this idea because we realize as citizens there's a lot to do for our built environment as architects. And for this kind of political interaction, we have to work together with others, forming and informing networks and making allies. And to be effective in this way and to work with the 5%, we have been shifting our roles and perspectives. And sometimes we take on the role as experts in media. Sometimes we are residents of buildings that are torn down and we need to ask questions. Like many buildings around the Werkerei should be torn down and replaced. And as ZAS, we wanted to find an alternative narrative for this sinking ship. So we decided to embark on a cruise together for 1 week. And sometimes we are also architects participating in competitions where we need to re-question the brief. So here again, the Salzweg building with a competition that the building should have been torn down and replacement was needed. And by analyzing the qualities of the existing, there were some members of the ZAS group that were also just filling it again with the existing. And now a project that has maybe sparked most public attention and that perhaps some also have heard in the Zurich context, the speculative idea competition that we organized for the 3 towers. They are former staff housing towers of the municipal hospital Trimli with 750 rooms, and they were planned to be demolished without any replacement. And given the housing shortage in Zurich, this left us very puzzled. And we realized that also the discussion passed by the public discourse, and it was a bit a case under the radar. So we tried to, or we decided to work on a competition on a speculative idea competition program to think the 3 towers with new ideas, and it has gained a lot of public attention. And I think the future of the towers is still under debate. And but I think this project has been talked about a lot, so I don't want to stay on that along. Working as ZAS in this role-shifting way gives us the opportunity to interact with the city from multiple angles and in ways we could have not done professionally. And now we have a new role, and it's a role as being the founder of the so-called Ämtli Für Städtebau. And it's important to mention that this project emerged hand in hand with our time teaching at the Department of Architecture. And during the time we planned our semester, we saw an Ausschreibung by Raumbörse, an association organizing interim use in Zurich, that the small pavilion right at the center of the city of Zurich was searching for a new user. And the building was designed in the end of the 1970s as a so-called culture pavilion, together with the Wertmühleplatz square design, and it was approved and realized around 1980. And the structure was mainly used at that time to sell tickets for cultural events. It is a simple building without large foundations and sanitary facilities, but in a column that Julian found at the Stadtarchiv, it says that it cost 250,000 francs at that time, without the interior fittings being included in the price. In the past years, the pavilion was also used as a meeting place for senior citizens, as a tourist service, as a ticket store, then as an information pavilion for the city's transport strategy 2025, and it was the last users before we came in was the Klimastadt Zurich Association. So we took the initiative to write an application with the intention to occupy a space right in the center of the city that would actually enable us to expand our scope of action. It was also at the same time that in the preparation of the semester we stumbled upon the document Wachstum 2050 of the administration of the Canton of Zurich that predicts an additional 450,000 people moving to the canton and announces the development of strategies for the upcoming population growth in the canton. And in fact, the city development in Zurich with the first and the second Eingemeindung, which is like the rezoning, end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, went also hand in hand with the professionalization and growth of administration. So for us, thinking the city across its current administrative borders also enabled us to think of adding another small administrative body. And today, the Ämtli Für Städtebau, which is located right next to the Ämtli Für Städtebau there, creates the conditions for the city of Zurich to be the place where we feel at home, as they indicate on their website. So it was very interesting for us to be in such close proximity to the actual city's administration, and we played with it from the word Amt to its diminutive, Ämtli, which is actually preoccupied with growth. In a text that we published as an invitation to the inauguration, we announced the Ämtli with the following vision. The Ämtli has set itself the task of thinking the city beyond its borders. It is the anti-Amt and the small Amt that thinks bigger, at once bootleg and thesis, persiflage and confidant of the Amt. The smart little sibling that tells you where to go without being asked. The Ämtli is watched by the Amt, and it is at the same time its observer. And the notion of Ämtli in Switzerland indicates also small tasks that people take within a group for the community. In fact, in the 1970s, the old ZAS formulated the statement "Information is co-determination," and wished for a permanent exhibition pavilion to inform citizens about the concepts and not about detailed questions. And we don't necessarily want to exhibit in this pavilion, but it serves as a space for projection and discussion. From last September onwards, for a period of now not even a year, half a year, the Ämtli für Städtebau on Wertmühleplatz between the Amt für Städtebau, Hochbauamt and Grünstadt Zürich is intended to project an open Zurich from the city center. And aware of this prominent location, the Ämtli can occasionally also throw its centrality overboard. And with this intention, we started to work with the structure. We cleaned the space, we painted the walls, and we also attached a sign and equipped it with a very simple infrastructure. We inaugurated the Ämtli Für Städtebau in September with a short talk, and also by asking everyone who's there to fill out forms for that the Ämtli could take over, so-called Stellenausschreibung. We imagine taking on Ämtli, which perhaps exceed the capacities of the official bodies, a low threshold open platform to ask and discuss without any bias. And soon after the opening, we were invited by our neighbor, the Amt für Städtebau. You see Katrin Gügler here. First, they presented themselves, and then we presented ourselves. And I think we were surprised by the warm, invitation from them, and it also felt that they were more afraid of us at first. And in the end, someone said that they, wished we were more radical. But perhaps this is also due to the fact that I think we still try out what direction we want to focus on with the Ämtli, and the last months were very, we were just trying out different formats. For instance, we organized a poster exhibition that included material from questions and material that we developed during the semester, and we wanted to question the mechanisms of public space and to get in conversation with passers-by. It was also a reenactment of such a poster exhibition or announcement from the 80s. Jakob and Julian organized the so-called lobby symposium in October, where invited journalists, politicians and lawyers introduced us into methods of lobbying at the Architecture Forum in Zurich. And we also invited guests for inputs into our space. We also took the Ämtli as a starting point for walks to the outside of the city center and invited different artists, but also politicians from the Außengemeinden to explore these paths with us. During the semester, we started to work on specific cases that we developed into thematic binders that somehow imitated or exaggerated their institutional origin. Such cases were, for instance, dealing with the voting rights for all, questioning who acts from a civil society and who can have an influence in the design of built environment, or a proposal called Discovery of a Hidden City, an attempt to look for ways to absorb as much of the city's growth in the existing structures as possible. Or also the entanglement of Zurich's land and property owners with the Swiss parliament. These cases are now kind of stored at the Ämtli and published in an edition of newspapers. And I think now we are confronted with the question how we want to continue. But we also held a press conference to present publicly, briefly, some of the topics that are important for us, and tried to invite a lot of press also. I think now they have, since the end of the semester, I think we also had a break, but we were now meeting again and also try to single out cases that we worked on during the semester that have a potential to be followed by the Ämtli. And I think we are still a lot in a position of definition what is actually happening there, and to whom we also want to provide the space to discuss. And this case, perhaps also Olli, who's who I saw coming here can later also say a few words, but is about the future of the 17 buildings of the Children's Hospital. And I think there's also now an initiative that has been formed that wants to use the Ämtli as a space for meeting, but in a way they also want to keep their independence from ZAS. But I think that, it puts us in an interesting role on how perhaps we could serve as a platform for civil organizations that want to somehow deal with the administration, and we can provide a certain network or knowledge or reach out, or I think that is something we also are eager to discuss tonight. Thank you.